News Talk 94.5, WPTI, 96.7 FM, WTOB. You're listening to the Wealth Guardians Show with Doug Ray, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. In the studio this morning, you have Brice Payne and Garrett Ray, and we're going to talk about, in the first segment, how to inflation-proof your retirement in 2025. And then when we get into the second segment, we're talking about what do you do if you're planning for a shorter retirement? Perhaps longevity is not on your side. Good morning, Brice. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Garrett. How are you?
I'm doing okay, Brice. I am forever thankful that we're slowly but surely starting to warm up.
Yeah.
Had our first little round of storms, I think, for the year this past week. So it's all looking up from here. Yeah, summer's coming.
Had some good winds there for one point. I took the tarp off the Jeep, so I'm looking forward to having some fun with the top down out there. Yeah, so thank you, everybody, for joining us. Appreciate you spending a little bit of your weekend with us. And as Garrett said, what we're talking about here in the first segment is inflation-proofing your retirement, just taking into consideration how inflation plays a role in retirement planning when you are a financial planner. And in the second segment, we're going to be talking about how to plan for a shorter retirement, or what changes when you're planning for a shorter retirement, meaning a shorter life expectancy. So stay tuned for that one as well. Garrett, let's go ahead and do our Wealth Guardian service salute, if we would.
Absolutely. We want to take a moment out of every broadcast that we do here at the Wealth Guardians to thank our men and women who are serving in uniform, our community first responders. It is because of what you do that we sleep well at night and freedom is protected and our communities are safe. Thank you very much to you and also your family members who provide that all-important support network for you.
Indeed. Yeah, appreciate it on our end every weekend. All right, Garrett, once at the start of every show here, too, on the weekends, we dip into a little bit of knowledge about who you and I are, who Doug is, as far as real people out there, just like our listeners. And we ask ourselves a question or share a little fact about us. And you're the one that came up with it. I haven't even gotten a preview of this question. So what is it that we're sharing about ourselves here this morning real quick?
So the question for ourselves, Brice, is what is your favorite childhood prank that you participated in? So I'll go first. I was a part of what we called the Great Jailbreak. It was in my 5th grade elementary school class. I had a buddy named, his name was Buddy Cheshire. And he just had enough of the teacher one day, and he said, I'm going to jump out that window. And I dared him to do it. He said, I'll do it if you create the distraction. So we had chalkboards, like actual chalkboards in my elementary school class. I don't even have those anymore. But what I did is I grabbed 2 erasers, and I just started marching around the classroom, beating the erasers to create like a cloud dust. Meanwhile, Buddy lifts the window and jumps out and just makes a hightail for as far as he could run. The police officer, like the resource officer at the school, had to go basically get in his patrol car and find him. We both found ourselves pretty quickly there in about an hour or two once they finally found Buddy hiding in the woods in the principal's office. It was not a good conversation. But yeah, that's my favorite childhood prank. I look back fondly on Buddy's escape from school.
That's good. I presume that was a first floor window.
It was a first floor window. Yeah, he wasn't bailing out ground floor here.
So, all right, very good. Well, I don't know what we consider childhood or not, but I am always been one for pranks. And there was a time, I guess it was in high school, and we were at one of those overnight kind of camp places, or for a week. And one of the girls, you take off your shoes when you were walking around inside the cabin. And one of the girls said, I caught her saying one time, I'm always afraid that when I put my feet back in my shoe that there's going to be a frog in there or something. So I immediately thought, okay, I'm going to work with that.
Amazing.
So I took a stone, just a rock, maybe about 2 inches in diameter, and just slipped it in her shoe. And then made sure I was around the next time she was putting on her shoes. And sure enough, she screamed and jumped.
Amazing.
Yeah.
There we go.
Fun times.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started on this subject here. And inflation-proofing your retirement. So, Garrett, when somebody sits down with us, they're getting ready to retire, and they want to see if a financial planner is something that they want to have on their side, helping them through retirement, helping them make all those financial decisions. One of the topics that comes up that people tend to have a lot of concerns about is inflation, particularly in the last couple of years. It might not have been a big deal 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, But in the last couple of years, it is certainly a subject that people want to talk about. And we have to do a little bit of education once in a while with people about inflation. So I printed out a chart here.
Okay.
And talked a little, just taking a look here. And so just so everybody has an idea, in 2024, our inflation rate was back down to 2.90. Government's always shooting for somewhere around that exact mark, right?
Right. That's 2% target.
Yeah, somewhere in there. 2023, it was 3.45. All right. 2022, 6.50, still recovering from the COVID. 2021, 7%.
Yep.
The year before that, 2020, was 1.4.
Yep.
Okay. So 2021, we jumped up immediately to 7%. Looking back at this, Garrett, when was the last time that we had inflation above 2.5%? You have to go back to 2011.
Yeah. It's and that was only 3%.
That was only 3%.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's the highest one other than that was 2016 with 2.1%. So inflation trained us a lot to have it, I don't want to say fly under our radar, but not be as an immediate concern as maybe it ought to be at times.
Yeah.
We were spoiled there with inflation for a good long while. And this post-COVID thing, the 7% in 2021, 2022, 6.5, that kind of brought us back to reality a little bit.
Yeah, it's, we had historically low inflation really through the mid 90s. All the way through, until we got into that, post-COVID era, starting in 2021. You did have a small spike in inflation back in 2007, it's about 4.1%.
And that's a spike.
That's right. That's considered a spike. But I mean, if you went from, say, 1991 all the way through 2007, and the highest year you had was 4.1%. And then from there, it took you all the way until 2021 to get to that 7%. People just kind of put inflation just kind of in the back of their mind. They hit the snooze button on it. They didn't think about it. But yet, when we have conversations with our clients, Brice, we are planning for that 100-year historical average of the country's history of 3.27%.
Right.
Where really, if we had been talking to a client in the mid-90s, in the early 2000s, the aughts, we would have been high on our inflation estimates based on what people were perceiving in reality.
Right.
And so occasionally we'll have, a client that comes in and they're a little bit, pessimistic, I'll say, about inflation. Oh, you guys are only projecting 3.27%. Well, we're taking a long-term horizon view of a country's history.
Right.
The other reason we do that, folks, is that no one sits down with us and says, Brice, Garrett, I only want to be retired for 5 years. No one says that.
Right.
They always want to be retired for hopefully 15, 20, 25, maybe even 30 years. Right. And when you're talking about that long of a retirement plan, you have to take the long-term view. You can't get caught up in what happened in the past 2-3 years, because our country's history just hasn't behaved that way.
Right.
It could be on the high side or the low side, depending on where we find ourselves in history. You have to take the long-term view.
Yeah. And when we had 2011 was 3%, and you go back and back and back, the last time that we had anything above that was 1996 with 3.3. Mm-hmm. There's 1990 at 6.1%. So that 3.27 we feel is an adequate number to use. Now, once in a while, we might have a client who asks us and say, well, I really want to plan for, and then prepare yourself. I already had a client who said, I want to prepare for 9% inflation. Now, I think the subtlety of these numbers tends to go overlooked by somebody who's not, it's somebody like an engineer like yourself. If you want to jump the number up and you want to be ultra conservative, you wouldn't go to 9%. You might go to 3.6,
right? Something
like that. It's a very subtle differences that are gonna, when you're talking about the 100-year average. So there's no need to plan for that. But we do plan for that 100-year average. But listen to this. Just let's say that somebody is living on $5,000 a month
today.
Okay. What does that number become 5 years from then if we're using that 3.27%? I'm asking you out there. $5,000 a month you're living on. It's the year 2025. If you're using the 3.27% 100-year average of inflation, what does that $5,000 become 5 years later?
So what are your expenses effectively come 2030?
Right.
Is what you're asking.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So it goes from $5,000 to, Garrett, what's that number?
$6,016 per month.
Okay. So we've gone up a full $1,000 a month in 5 years.
In 5 years. Yep.
2035, $7,066. 2040, another 5 years, $8,300. That's only 15 years.
Right.
Between 2025 at $5,000 a month to 2040, 15 years, now $8,300 a month. If you are trying to create a financial plan for yourself and figure out if you have enough money to live in retirement, you'd better have numbers that represent that kind of supposedly reality.
Yeah. And I'm just looking ahead here. Let's say someone comes to us at 65. They're planning for just a 20-year retirement, puts them at 85 years old. That same $5,000 a month lifestyle expense, let's call that today, in 2045, 20 years from now, that's $9,748 per month under our current planning metric.
Exactly right.
So, for those who are concerned about inflation, we have you covered. We're planning for inflation. We put a lot of validity into this 100-year historical average. And what's interesting, Brice, is then when we go through a retirement plan with folks and we show them the numbers on, yes, we are factoring inflation into your plan, and we're running the numbers on projected rate of returns, their drawdown of their accounts, also inflating expenses all along the way. When we show them that everything is still looking fine, then that brings a level of comfort to folks that they really just needed someone to kind of tie all the numbers together.
That's exactly right.
What's so very common is we have folks with a lot of numbers in their head,
yes,
but they don't see how the dots connect.
That's right.
And that's a lot of what we do here is helping people connect those dots and say, hey, everything that I'm worried about, these guys are planning for.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. Very good. Well, we got to get to a break here. And in our second segment, we're going to talk about how does retirement planning change if you want to plan for a shorter retirement, meaning you have a shorter than a normal life expectancy for yourself. And so there are some figures that change there, but we got to get to a break here. And Garrett, I think you've got the trivia question.
I do, Brice. So a report came out recently that I always look forward to every year. The IBIS World Listing of the top 10 most profitable U.S. industries. Okay. The industries. And we're talking profits, not revenues. So raw profit here. After all expenses are taken into consideration, the question for you is simple. What is the most profitable industry in the United States today?
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay, I'll think about that. And that's going to take it for this side of the segment. We're going to catch you on the other side here. So stick around for a quick break, and we'll be back with the answer to that trivia question and see if Garrett stumped me. This is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. This is 96.7 FM WTOB. Stock 94.5 WPTI, 96.7 FM WTOB. Welcome back to the Wealth Guardian Show, where we help you retire the job and keep the paycheck. I'm Brice Payne in the Wealth Guardian studio this morning, along with Garrett Ray. And in this second segment, we're going to talk about how does retirement planning change when you're planning for a shorter retirement, meaning a shorter life expectancy. Now, before we answer that trivia question that Garrett left me and you hanging with, I want to ask you this. Are you planning to retire? Okay, great. Have you met with a retirement income certified professional who is also a fiduciary? Why not? If you haven't, I want to invite you to take us up on a complimentary, no cost, no obligation review of your current situation. As certified retirement planning specialists, we're going to put together a customized written plan with strategies for portfolio allocation, income distribution, Social Security filing, and tax efficiency, with the additional benefit of often reducing both the risk and the fees of your current plan. So if you put aside at least $400,000 for retirement and you want to take us up on this no cost, no obligation review, give us a call, 336-391-3409, or go to thewealthguardians.com. That's thewealthguardians.com to learn more. Let us show you in black and white how to retire the job and keep the paycheck. All right. So Garrett, run this trivia question by me again.
Okay. So IBIS World just released their list that I look forward to every year. So this is going for 2024 data. They released it in early 2025. And it lists out the top 10 most profitable industries in the United States. So the keyword there is profits, not necessarily gross revenues. But what industry would you guess, Brice, is the most profitable in the U.S. economy?
best turnaround of your dollar. So I'm debating it's either between pharmaceuticals or entertainment.
Okay.
And I'm going to say entertainment. I'm going to say Hollywood probably makes an enormous amount of profit for what they put out.
That would be incorrect.
Is that okay?
That would be incorrect. Okay, but
there we go.
You were close to it. You were close to it. So number one most profitable industry in the United States in 2024 was U.S. hospitals. So it certainly involves pharmaceuticals, but
this hospital was the most profitable.
Yeah, with $176 billion in profits.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, I kind of laugh at this list because the next three are all in the sector of finance. So number two, portfolio management and investments, $173 billion. Third, life insurance and annuities, $158 billion. Fourth, private equity and hedge funds at $153 billion. Then we get into something that I thought a lot of people might guess. Number five, software publishing, $153 billion as well.
I threw that one in my mind for a second.
Yep. Six, commercial real estate, $132.8 billion. Seven, we get to oil and gas exploration and development, $121.7 billion. Number eight, surprise, surprise, apartment rentals, $98.5 billion. Number nine, this one shocked me, but it's kind of funny. College and universities.
Yeah.
Yep. $72.6 billion of profit there.
Yeah.
And number 10, electric power transmission. Otherwise, those power grids, right?
So Hollywood and pharmaceuticals weren't in there, period.
Not in pure profits. Nope.
Okay,
nope. Just $61.6 billion.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I like how I do the history ones and you always do something financial related. That's great. All right. So let's go ahead here. And we're talking about how does retirement planning change if you're thinking, hey, I'm not going to live to be 100 years old. I'm not going to live to be 90 years old. I might not even live to be 80 years old. We do have a number of clients who come in and say that to us. And this is an example of something that somebody might say when they sit down with you and me, Garrett.
Okay.
None of the men in my family lived very long. My dad, both grandfathers, all of my uncles, they all died in the early 60s. I'm 55 and considering retirement now. So I want to enjoy my golden years since I probably won't live very long either. How does it change the planning for somebody who isn't worried about longevity? So we get that. And I will start off by saying this, that I don't recall any of our clients, even though we get people who say that frequently, I don't recall in the 8 years, going on 8 years that I've been here with the Wealth Guardians and been doing this with you and your dad, any of our clients passing away of natural causes before their mid-70s. Now, I might be overlooking something, but it's certainly not frequent. I mean, there might be one or two cases out there that I'm overlooking.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen very often, even though a lot of people's concerns is that it's going to. So what does that tell us that we need to probably plan on the conservative side?
Right. You always want to plan for longevity.
Right.
You always want to plan for, having a long retirement. Because if you, let's just say, live a little in your golden years, and you draw down your accounts too quickly. But then, the Grim Reaper doesn't come and you're still with us in your early to mid 70s, but things are getting incredibly tight. Think about it, folks, that you're starting to get into your most vulnerable years and now things are getting tight. We'd rather you have plenty in the coffers as you enter your mid 70s, your early 80s, when just naturally people are starting to get in the more vulnerable years. You probably have higher healthcare costs at that point. Everyone does. Let's go ahead and plan for that. So that's one thing that at least, I would throw out there is just say, hey, the actuarial science on this is actually pretty good. Unless you have just a known medical condition where you've got the diagnosis in your hand, and it's a serious conversation you've had with your doctor, then okay, that's different. If it's just, hey, I'm worried about it, let's still plan for the long term.
Right.
Let's still plan for the long term.
And so the question would become, let's say that somebody has some pretty good information from their doctor that they're not going to have a long retirement. How does that change our retirement approach to finances with them? Because as retirement specialists, portfolio management is one of the things that we do, but making sure that all of the income, all of the assets, and all the expenses are synchronized up well with each other. Here's something to think about. just because you want to outlive your money, you want your money to outlive you, and you think you're only going to live to be 75, do we have a spouse that we need to consider?
Exactly. I was just about to say that.
We have legacy goals, meaning specific legacy goals that you want to leave a certain something amount for the kids. Sometimes somebody will just say, hey, whatever I've got left over, I'll go to the kids. Other people say, no, I want to leave a specific amount for each of my 3 kids.
Yep.
So let's ask ourselves that question. Well, let's say that, oh yeah, you know what? I didn't think about my wife. That's right. Do we have a mortgage that you might, that your mortgage might outlive you? Okay.
Right.
That's something that we have to consider. Social Security filing definitely takes a unique turn, almost a hairpin turn.
I would agree.
If you think that you're not going to live a full life, the typical, normally it's the male who has a larger Social Security monthly amount whenever they turn that on than the female for a number of reasons, but maybe she was a mother and she stayed at home for a number of years. If she's got the lower Social Security amount and you have a larger one and you're going to pass away soon, okay, great. She gets to inherit your Social Security. But there might have been a way for us to strategize our filing so that you're leaving her more than what you otherwise would have if you thought you were going to live a long life. So that can take it. So there's a number of things that go into changing how we plan. Another one would be if you have mostly IRAs and you think you're going to pass away early, if you leave those monies to your spouse, IRA monies to your spouse, those are taxable monies.
Yep.
But if you had converted those monies to a Roth, then what she's inheriting are tax-free monies. So there's some strategizing around what kind of accounts you're leaving your beneficiaries as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that comes into play with even non-qualified accounts or just, out there on the street. You guys may just call them brokerage accounts or investment accounts.
Yep.
Let's say we've got a couple where they've got joint non-qualified accounts, but one of the spouses has a very kind of dark diagnosis, I'll say.
I'm glad you're going down this road.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you basically the next day put all of the money in the spouse who has the poor diagnosis? That way, when that person passes, the spouse inherits the money, gets the step up in cost basis, and effectively inherits that money with no cost basis whatsoever. Whereas if he or she had stayed on the account,
stated as a joint account,
stayed as a joint account, then unfortunately, even though the spouse still passes, the cost basis doesn't change.
Well, half of it,
half of it does.
Half of it does change, but So in what Garrett just said there was if you didn't cash that is an enormous strategy to use. If one of you has an idea that you're not going to live much longer and you've got a joint brokerage account, I'm just repeating what Garrett said here.
Yep. But it's worth repeating.
Yeah, absolutely is. If it's in both of your names and one of the spouses passes, that could be a taxable consequence, at least 50% of that account for the spouse who is surviving.
Correct.
But if you moved it all of the monies, and that's just an easy sign of paperwork, there's no consequence tax-wise of changing a joint account into an individual account.
Correct.
No problem at all. But then when that spouse, now it's in the spouse who's going to pass, it's in their name, and then that spouse passes, now the other spouse, the surviving spouse, inherits that account, no tax consequences for growth.
Nope. Not a account. Yep.
So it's
at least as the data passing. Yep.
Yeah. So that is an enormous way to, I don't want to say outsmart Uncle Sam, but it is, that is definitely kind of what you're doing there is you are bypassing what would normally be a taxable event.
I would just lump it into estate planning.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, so that's one thing that has to change there. Well, Garrett, that's all the time that we've got today. Thank you for joining us. Oh, I do want to mention we've got our taxes and retirement seminar coming up. We had it this Thursday on the 20th, and we've got it again Tuesday, March 25th at 6:30 p.m. at our office in Clemens. No cost or obligation to attend, but you do have to register. So how do you register? Give us a call at 336-391-3409. Or visit our website, thewealthguardians.com, and click on the events tab. If you're planning on retiring soon and you haven't sat through one of our taxes and retirement seminars, you want to, because there is a lot to learn about how taxes change in retirement. That's going to wrap it up for us this weekend. We do thank you for spending some of your weekend with us. We hope to hear you back and see you back here next weekend. Remember, retire the job, keep the paycheck. Sound financial plans do not create themselves. This is Newstalk 94.5 WPTI. This is 96.7 FM, WTOB.